The Snow Walker's Son by Catherine Fisher. Published 1994 by Red Fox. Chapter 3. With a good man it is good to talk. Make him your fast friend. I'll have my hand on them, and she meant us. Jessa watched Maud Signey stack the slabs of peat carefully onto the back of the fire, and jerk his hand out as the sparks leapt. What do you think she meant?
I don't think, Maud said, straightening. Not about her.
He was a tall man. His grey hair brushed the low turf roof. He glanced over at his wife, folding Jessa's clothes into a leather bag.
But I can't let this go, not without a murmur.
She put her hand on his shoulder. It's no use talking to Ragnar, she said quietly. Why should he listen? And then she bent forward and whispered so that Jessa only just caught the words. Stay out of it. You have your own children to think of. He turned aside, silent. Jessa felt sorry for him. He had been a kinsman of her father. He was a marked man in the Jarl's hold, and his wife was right. No pleading would move Ragnar, and anyway, she, Jessa, wouldn't have it. Maud came back to the fire. The hearth was a large square one in the middle of the house, and around the walls were the sleeping booths, with their wooden screens and warm, musty hangings. By now the fire was a hot blaze, licking and spitting over the new peats, throwing glows and shadows around the room, over Thorkil's face and Maud's, worried and upset. Outside the afternoon sky was darkening with snow. Winter lingered late, as usual in the Jarl's hold. Thorkil said, Maud, tell us about Gudrun.
Best not to, lad. I'd rather keep my tongue.
But we need to know. Thorkil glanced at Maud's wife, with her youngest daughter pulling at her skirts. Well, we're going there after all. She turned away from him. He's right, Maud. Maud put down the peat he had been crumbling, and got up slowly, and locked the door. Coming back, he sat closer to the fire.
It's a stranger story than any Skald saga. Much of it you'll know, I'm sure. When Ragnar was a young man, the Wolfings were the ruling kin in the north. He was just one of many small landowners, but your fathers were two more. But he was ambitious. He bought land where he could, stole it where he couldn't, ruined his enemies in the Althing. That was the old lore court, and gathered ruthless, cruel men about him. Still, he might have stayed as he was, if it hadn't been for her.
Maud paused. Then he said,
Beyond the Ingvir River and the mountains, there's only ice. It stretches, they say, to the edge of the world, into the endless blackness. Travellers, those who have come back, speak of great cracks that open underfoot, of mountains smooth as glass, of the sky catching fire. Beyond the icebergs, even the sea freezes. No animals live there, not even the white bears, though I have heard a tale of a long, glistening worm that burrows in the ice. It may not be true, but certainly there are trolls and ettins and some sort of spirit that howls in the empty crevasses. In those lands live the white people, the Snow Walkers, a race of wizards. No one knows much about them, except that sometimes they would come to the northern borders and raid. Children would disappear from farms, and it would be said that the white people had taken them. Cattle, too, and sometimes dogs. One year the raids were so bad the old Jarl sent Ragnar and a war band to march up there and settle it. They crossed the hills by way of the old giant's road that parses Thrasershall, and marched down the other side, straight into a white mist. It was waiting for them there, a solid whiteness that even the wind couldn't blow away. 50 men marched into that devil's trap, and only one came out.
What was it? Thorkil asked.
Sorcery. Rune magic. Maud shrugged. Who knows? But 3 months later a ship came into the harbour at Tarva. A strange ship with dark sails and 20 oarsmen. Tall, white-haired men who spoke a fluid, unknown language. The old man, Grettir, led them. He was younger then, of course. Then Ragnar came out of the ship, and with him a woman, white as ice, cold as steel. To this day no one knows who she is, or what God-forsaken agreement he made with them to save his life. But we soon found out what sort of creature had come among us.
Jessa glanced at Thorkil. He was listening intently, his fingers working at the laces of his boots, knotting and unknotting over and over.
The first thing, Maud went on, was that the old Jarl died one night in a storm. He was hale enough when he went to bed, but in the night he gave a sudden scream, and when they got to him, he was dead. There was a mark, they say, like a spread hand in the skin of his face. It faded away till in the morning there was nothing left.
Thorkil's head jerked up and his eyes met Jessa's. Maud did not notice.
And his fingers, there was a web of ice all over them. After that, it was easy. Rumours flew, fear built up. The Jarl had left no son. The Ulfing should have chosen another of the Wolfings, and there were plenty of good men. But they didn't. Fear made them fools. They chose Ragnar. 2 disagreed, I remember. One was killed by a bear. The other froze in a drift on a dark night. None of his family knew why he'd left the house, but the little boy said a white lady had called him through the window.
He looked up.
You must have heard much of this.
Jessa shrugged. Some of it. No one tells you much when you're small. But what about Carrie? Maud glanced at the door. His voice was quiet now, barely heard.
It happened. I was with Ragnar when the news came, and we were in the forest, watching them cut timber for the hold. A son, the messenger said, but there was something about the way he said it. Ragnar noticed too. He asked what was wrong. The man muttered something about the midwife screaming. He seemed too terrified to answer. The Jarl almost knocked me over as he rode off. The gods help me, I've never seen a man look so stricken.
Did the messenger see the baby? Jessa asked.
No, but he didn't need to. Rumours soon got round. You know them. The child is a monster. For myself, I think the High One struck at Ragnar's pride and her sorcery. That's the gods' way. They kept the child here for a while, called it Carrie, but no one ever saw it except Gudrun and the old man. Ragnar has never set eyes on him.
So he told us, Thorkil muttered.
And she hates it. She'll never even hear its name, Carrie. When the creature was about 5 years old, she got Ragnar to send it away to the ruined hall in the north. I think she hoped it would die of cold. Brokyle Gunnarsson was in prison. Now he was one of the Wolfing's men, and he had said something against her, so Ragnar took his land and sent him to be the child's keeper. It was a hard revenge. He sighed. I was fond of Brokyle. A good man. He may be long dead. No one has been near them in all this time.
Until now, Thorkil said. There was silence. If no one has seen him, Jessa said suddenly, grasping at hope, how do they know he's so terrible?
Why else would she lock him up?
It was a good answer. Well, Thorkil said, we'll soon find out. Maud frowned at him.
Be careful, lad. Be discreet. They say she can bend your mind to her will.
Thorkil laughed coldly. Not mine. Jessa had been thinking. Carrie and this Brokale must be dead by now. How can they live up there? How will we, she thought.
Gudrun would know. She always has ways of knowing. That's why, in these last years, your fathers and the Wolfings stood no chance. She was too much for them.
Thorkil stared bleakly into the fire. Jessa pulled absently at the ends of her hair. Maud caught his wife's eye.
But that's enough talk. Now we should eat.
The food at the Jarl's Hold was good and plentiful. They had broth and fish and honey cakes. Despite her worries, Jessa was hungry. What would they eat, she wondered, at the ruined hall in the mountains? No crops would grow there. No animals would survive. She had never known real hardship. Their farm had been a rich one. What would it be like? When they had finished, Maud rose and pulled on his outdoor coat.
Come on. It's wise not to keep her waiting.
Outside the sky was black, frosted with stars glinting in their faint colours. The moon was a low, silvery globe, balancing, it seemed, on the very tips of the mountains far off. It was lighting their frozen summits with an eerie bluish shimmer. By now the Jarl's Hold was quiet and very cold. A few dogs loped past them as they walked between the silent houses. Once a rat ran across the frozen mud. Like all the houses Jessa had known, these were low and roofed with turf, boarded and shuttered now to keep the warmth of the fires in. Smoke hung in a faint mist over the settlement. Only the hall was noisy. They could hear the murmur of sound grow as they walked towards it. The shutters were up again, but a circle of light flickered in the ring window high up in the wall. Laughter floated out, and voices. A doorkeeper sat outside, polishing a sword with a whetstone. A great wolf-like mastiff sprawled at his feet. Maud nodded to the man and put his hand on the latch. Then he turned.
Don't eat anything she gives you, he breathed. Don't drink. Avoid her eyes. I don't know what else to say. If she wants you, she'll get you.
And then he opened the door.